And people invariably say to me, what is it like having played in this tournament more times than anybody else? What is it? I hold so many records here, numerous records. And I say the one word that comes to my mind, it is a talent that is merely loaned to you. It is not on a permanent basis. It can be taken away any time. As we've seen it taken away from 5 world potential champions, we won't mention names, but 5, if you go through the last 20 years, world champions, and tomorrow they were nothing. So we cannot take things for granted. So every time I arrive here, I get out of the car as I go into Magnolia Drive, and I walk up there, and I say a prayer of thanks. Because you've got to be blessed. Everybody in this room is in the top 1% of the world. And yet we sometimes think we have problems. So it's fascinating, and for me, the older you get, the more you realize the value of the mind. You realize, I watched Jordan Spieth play today, this wonderful young man, a terrific young guy. And he's a great role model for young people. And I'm watching him lead the tournament, and I'm dying to be his father and say, because he's like this. Everything, you know, he's so jumpy. I don't know if you watched it. But it's understandable that you can be jumpy. You know you're going to, you win this, it's worth $10 million. You can get very jumpy. And it's windy, but it's the same for everybody else. But I'm dying to tell him, just because I vividly remember whenever I was playing against Nicholas and Palmer here, coming down the line, and it's only going to win by one shot, that I always did something in slow motion. I did everything. I teed my ball up slowly. I had a practice swing in slow motion, just trying to get myself to calm down, because you've got to keep your cool. We know the great poem about keeping your cool and everybody about you is losing it. Yeah. And so it doesn't matter how good you are, we can all learn something. And I remember the first time I came to America, in Chicago, at the Tam O'Shanter, and the first time I saw Arnold, this charismatic man, hitting balls with this unusual swing, and the wind was blowing, and I saw him pick the grass up like this and throw it up in the air. He didn't look. I said, what do you do that for? He says, all the good players do it, so I do it. But I've had an incredible journey. I can die a happy man. Married for 60 years. In fact, my wife and I, ladies, are getting remarried next year on a beach in South Africa with all our grandchildren. We have 22 grandchildren and 6 children. In fact, we have a family of 55. And recently I experienced my 80th birthday at Sun City in South Africa, probably the best resort I've ever seen anywhere on the planet. And I thought to myself, I paid the check for dinner. It was $35,000. I said to my wife, I said, look at this. I said, you know, for a man that used to make £30 a month, for 3 years I've come a long way. So, but again, you see, and I took my wife's hand under the table, and I said, I'm so thankful. You've got to be gratitude, and the Bible it talks about gratitude. It is an essential ingredient in one's life. And the other thing is, I think it's important for young people. I'm so disappointed in the educational system in this phenomenal country. I look at South Africa and I look at a school. There's no question, a tiny country like South Africa, if you took the 20 best schools in the world, we come out on top by a mile. It's more, and it's inexcusable in other countries that are economically greater populations cannot follow suit. The school I went to actually saved my life, with my mother dying at the age of 8, which is very hard to accept. But obviously people have far more serious things than I had. But for me it was very serious. But my father didn't have any money, but he sent me to this public school. I had to go to school with a tie on and a jacket and a hat. I had to stand up when the teacher came in the classroom. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir. I had to take my hat off. I'm never allowed to keep my hat on inside. We spoke 5 languages at school. We knew all about the Great Lakes when I was 9 years of age in America. We had debating halls of which you had to take part, which stood me in good stead because I'd like to be known as the best orator of any athlete that ever lived, because we were renowned as very poor speakers. And they all concerned with their immediate, particular story in their lives, their profession. They forget that the world is different, as I mentioned, it's global. And so going to the school, debating, having to learn about world affairs, and the sports facilities, Olympic pool, track fields, football fields, cricket fields, tennis courts, the whole lot. I was blessed. And I'd come home at night. Think about this. I'd travel an hour and a half to school, an hour and a half back. And after participating in the activities at school, I'd get on a bus and a streetcar, a tram we called it, and I'd arrive at my house. It was pitch dark. Nobody there. 8. To iron my clothes, to wash my clothes, to feed myself, to cook, and to wake up in the morning and never be late, because it was inexcusable to be late at school. So, you know, it's amazing when you think back at the time. It was so tough, and yet that, plus other attributes, are the reason that I became a world champion, which, again, I without being repetitive, I'm really, really thankful. You know, I'm not short of words, so let's have a few questions, man.
Mr. Player, thank you so much for being here. I have 3 questions. One is, this is one big question. Okay, what's your least favorite hole at Augusta? What's your favorite hole at Augusta? And what player in the past or now do you most admire?
The worst hole at Augusta, no question, is the 8th hole. It was built for Ray Charles. I mean, you stand there on the second shot and you've got a guy with a stick going like this. When to play. All they had to do, when they got all the money in the world here, you know, when a club can buy highways and can buy parking lots and villages and turn them into a parking lot and build a practice tee that cost $100 million. The chairman said the other night, guys, enjoy this practice tee. It costs $100 million. Hard to comprehend. Number one, that's your first answer. Now, all they had to do with the money they've had is hollow it out, move the dirt here, because I've designed over 300 golf courses. Just bring the dirt here, amphitheatre it on the side, and make it so you can see with this massive amphitheatre, which would be very, very receptive to the galleries not having to walk up the damn hill and being able to sit there and watch and be able to see the shots. Number one. Number two, you've got to, the other thing was, who do I admire most in golf? Without a question, Jack Nicklaus. Jack Nicklaus played with difficult times like I did, very different. Mine was political, his was animosity or frustration. When Arnold Palmer was this icon and a very charismatic man, obviously, and the three of us love each other. We traveled extensively around, not getting massive sums of money, but really promoting the game of golf. But when we played at Baltusrol, they had signs at the back of the green for Nicklaus. Hit it here, Ohio Fats. Palmer would hit it 30 foot from the hole and they go mad, and he'd put it 10 foot from the hole, you'd hear. And this went on every week. They were playing because Palmer was being beaten by this man. But beaten, I mean really beaten. So we get down to Augusta and we're on the 3rd hole. Thank goodness I've got this great memory. And we get on the 3rd hole, and man, they are cheering for Palmer when he gets a par and cheering for Nicklaus when he gets a bogey. It's hard to imagine that's actually transcendent. And he says to me, the more they do this, the more I'm going to beat him, and the more I'm going to win. Now, here's the other side of the story. When we played with numerous other players, and they were screaming, and when Palmer, you play with Palmer, they screamed in your ear. I mean, you can't believe what it was like. It was very frustrating if you succumbed. And I remember on numerous occasions, guys, I can't play with Palmer. I just can't play. If I draw him in the draw, I might as well withdraw. I've got no chance. And I said, well, you're a bloody woozy. Now, let's go back. I came here in '61, and I'm leading Palmer by 4 shots. And here's this little foreigner going to beat the icon. And there are 20,000 people there, and there's one person pulling for me, my wife and my dog. and I understand, and I accept it. They were pulling for their icon. Who's this foreigner? Why should we pull for him? But I fully understood that. But I loved that, because with the adversity that I'd experienced as a kid, this was Mickey Mouse compared to that. And I said, man, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you with all the screaming going on. You can do what you like, as long as you don't throw a brick at me or pick up the ball. But on the other hand, whereas Nicholas had that, I lost the PGA at Dayton, Ohio in 1969 by one shot, and I'll go to my grave knowing I won 10 majors, not 9, because due to the apartheid system of where I lived in South Africa, even though America had their own apartheid system, we conveniently forgot about that. But South Africa had theirs, and whilst I was playing, they were throwing ice in my eyes, telephone books in my backswing at the top of the swing, screaming when I had a putt this long and I missed the hole by that much, throwing balls between my legs, throwing ice in my eyes, charging me out of the galleries on these amphitheatres and tearing the greens up, and 3 policemen sleeping in my room every night of the year for 2 years. And that's tough to play at that. No mulligans, as we mentioned. No mulligans. So we all have difficulties in our life to contend with. So we come to Augusta now. I've answered Jack Nicklaus. The reason I say Jack Nicklaus, because it's very easy to be a good winner. But I admire rather a man who's a good loser. And when you beat Jack Nicklaus, he looked you in the eye. And I played him in the World Match Play Championship in England, 36-hole final on a long golf course in October. The course was wet. And they always have 12 newspapers giving their opinion who will win. It was unanimous that he was going to beat me. So I beat him 6-4. So the next year we come back, same thing, I beat him 5-4. So I said to you guys, when are you going to learn? But in the meantime, when I beat him, he put his arm out, and he looked me in the eye, and he said, well done. And he meant it, and he put his arm around me. Of course, you knew he'd get you the next week. But he put his arm around you, and I wanted to win the Grand Slam before him, and I was going to Greensboro, and he said, look, if you want to win the Grand Slam, you better come with me and practice at the US Open. And I was reluctant to do it because I needed the money, and I wanted to go to Greensboro. I eventually went with him, and I won the tournament. But I won the tournament in a different way because of the training that I'd worked on. I've always worked on my mind, on meditation, reading, improving my mind, and learning from traveling around the world, from people in India and Asia where they had very sophisticated methods of training. And I used to sit like this in the room at the US Open because I wanted to win this so badly, to win the Grand Slam. And I sat like this, and I went through the Tai Chi position. Now if you try and sit like this with your legs parallel to the ground and your back arched like this for 5 minutes, in this room if they did it for 10 seconds they'd fall on their butt. So, and then I'd sit there like this and I'd give myself the pain barrier. I mean serious patience, accept adversity, enjoy adversity, gratitude, never give up, attack. And I'd go through all this mind process. And then I'd go down to the scoreboard. And they had this big scoreboard which is typical of the US Open, prior year, names there historically. And there's Ken Venturi in gold, 1964, which is 1965 now. And I sit there and nobody there in the mornings because I get there early. And I visualize Gary Player, Gary Player, Gary Player. And the way I prepared, I never went out, to dinner one night. I sat in the room, I meditated, I mapped the golf course, and I wore, and I'm not superstitious, I'm anti-superstition. I think anybody who practices superstition is actually, without being rude, is being bloody stupid. Because if you take Nadal, if you watch him play tennis, I love Nadal, but I don't want to watch him anymore. I mean, the effort that man hits before he serves is frightening. And with all that superstition, he's losing like hell. So why doesn't his coach say, you're wasting your time, man, you're not winning. That superstition is not helping you. You've got to channel your energies in the right direction, folks. You can't channel it in the wrong direction. And so superstition to me is crazy. But did I finish my last statement?
You did. Well,
No.
there was
one more.
What's your favorite?
My favorite hole is probably the easiest hole of the golf course, 12. It's the easiest until the bell goes. You see, when they used to do boxing, they all used to knock Muhammad Ali out when they were doing the boxing. But when they got in the ring, man, it was a different story. They couldn't run fast enough. And so that 12th green, you stand there in a practice round, it's an 8-iron or a 9-iron. Now that you play today, it's a monster. Because it's the lowest part of the golf course. And that wind swirls down into that 12th hole. And my first experience, I see the two best players I ever saw as a team. Ben Hogan and Sam Snead. If you gave them the conditions of today, across the board, they beat anybody. But anyway, and he was the best athlete that ever lived, Sam Snead, as a professional golfer. Nobody's come close. But anyway, be that as it may, my first experience, Hogan and Snead playing. Hogan hits it at 7-iron over the green. Windy day like today. Snead takes an 8-iron, hits it in the water. So I mean, it swirls, and so when you walk off there with a par, I'm going to tell you, it's a relief. It's a relief. I call it the vulture corner. Never mind, amen. It's the vulture corner. So it's a simple hole. There are many holes that are much tougher. But, you know, it just goes to show.
I'll ask you.
I'm vehemently against building golf courses longer and longer. There have been probably hundreds, now listen to this, hundreds of millions of dollars spent in the last, hypothetically, 15 years on changing golf courses. Unnecessarily so. You've got a beautiful course in whatever country you live in, and all of a sudden you're enjoying your golf, it's a pleasure to play, you can handle it. Now your committee come in, oh, we had a pro here, he had a drive and a 6-iron on our par 5. So what? You're never going to have a tournament there. So now we've got to change it. Now you've got these brilliant committee guys who want to leave a legacy, and I changed my club. They should bury the bastards. And they put a bunker in front of the green. Now this little old lady, she cannot hit a ball over the bunker and stop it. Okay? And then they make the greens undulating, and they're like one leg shorter than the other. Do you know, I would take the best golfer in this room, even if you're a 3 handicap, and I would take you to Augusta tomorrow, and I'd put the flag on the green, and I'd put you on the green on 18 holes, and if you had a great day, you'd have 18 3-putts. You were watching the guys playing today, they were all 3-putting at least 3 times. And these are the best in the world. So these greens have crippled more people than polio. Is that it? Okay. Thank you.
Question: as a Canadian, can you speak a little bit about Mo Norman and his swing? You played back when Mo played at the Masters.
The most exaggerated person I've ever met in my life. It's amazing how stories can be multiplied and exaggerated. You know, they told me, the first thing I met him, they said, you know this guy Mo Norman, he hits the ball so damn straight that he has to lean over sideways to see the flag. So I was listening to this, and then when he hit the ball, he'd say, now, you got to do this, you got to keep it low, you know. And I said, well, this guy's, you're telling me, is the straightest and best player in the world. What tournaments has he won? None. I said, well, this is wonderful. I said, if my business was run like that, if my bottom line's no good, I'm gone. I said, I wish I had a business like that. So, but he was on the practice team, phenomenal. But that's where it ended. And then it even got more exaggerated. Because these Canadians, you know, they like to give you a bit of bulldog, you know. When you so now,
sorry guys.
Now he says, they say, you know that Mo Norman played this hole, and I played in a lot of Canadian Opens, and I just love Canada. I think it's a country that's probably got an infrastructure that is so unbelievable, with space, food, with gold, with oil, but above all, the most important thing in the world today, water. America is running out of water. Africa is running out of water. Australia is running out of water. We've got some Aussies in the room here tonight, they'll verify. And Canada are inundated with it. And you are going to be buying water from them if you're not buying it right now. So here's this great country. I played in all these Australian Opens. And then I've got to listen to a man tell me when I played the Australian Open, you see this whole, you hitting a drive and a wedge. You know what Mo Norman used to do? He used to take his wedge first, hit it on the bridge, and get it to bounce on the fairway, then he'd hit his driver on the green. You know, these Texans can give you some good stories, but they're nothing like that. So, I hope I've answered that in the most diplomatic way I can.
Question from Australia. We'll go from
Good,
one end of
good.
the planet to the other. Rob, you had a question?
Dita was going to ask it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Dita.
What's your happiest and fondest win?
Well, I won 7 Australian Opens, and Nicholas and I were always trying to beat each other to win the most Australian Opens. And in our time, the Australian Open was always, if there is such a thing, a 5th major. It was the 5th most important tournament to Jack and myself. And I travelled there extensively, went there 31 times, and went right throughout the country, marvellous country. And we were playing, Arnold, Jack and I were playing in Paris one year in the Canada Cup, which is now known as the World Cup. And we're playing and we're going to leave for Australia on Monday, or excuse me, Sunday night, but it's fogged out. So the travel agent comes and says, I can get you to arrive in Melbourne, Australia at Royal Melbourne, a very famous golf course, 3 hours before the tournament starts. Are you prepared to go? Arnold, Jack said, no. I said, I'm going. Now, in those days, they didn't have the routes that they have today, and the convenience. I went Paris, New York, LA, Fiji, Sydney, Melbourne, 3 hours before. Never seen the course, 16-hour time change, absolutely exhausted, and I had a shower, and I had a sandwich, and I went out there, and I won it by 7 shots. Vein, this press man said to me, how did you do that? He says, I just flew from America. It took me 10 days to get over it. How did you do it? I said, it's very simple. It's a little thing called talent.
I think there was some unmatched dedication to becoming so excellent. I mean, you know, please thank me. Thank me. The only thing you can thank me for is working tirelessly to have our speaker tonight.